What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here. Delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. Head to my newsletter, which the link is in the description below, and get a free graphic novel for signing up. Appreciate you guys who do that. Appreciate everybody who comes here to the channel. So, welcome. This is Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman, the Complete Collection, Volume 2. And this comprises of Fantastic Four 579 through 588, and then it was rebranded and restarted and rebooted as FF 1 through 5 for reasons I'll get into the book. Now, this makes up, with the Complete Collection Volume 1 and Volume 2, the exact contents of the Omnibus Volume 1. So if you're collecting that way, that is a way you can go about getting these. I wish I could say that these were a lot less expensive than the Omnibus. This Complete Collection Volume 2, as of this video, is out of print and going for over $100 just by itself, which is a little crazy. They really need to get this Hickman stuff back into print. It's very popular. But why is it so popular? Let's get into this. It starts out with some slow rolls, and I'd say most of this volume has a slow roll to it. It's got I believe Steve Epting's art. Is that who's doing the art here? Steve Epting does after the first 3 issues. But this art's good. It's by Neil Edwards also. Neil Edwards. Very nice looking figures and all that, as basically they're gathering the villains of the Fantastic Four to help fight a crisis they know is coming, because they've got this whole convoluted future going down. Actually, the beginning of this is just a couple sojourns is a good word, a couple side issue, I don't want to call it filler, but it's not really pushing that main plot forward. I actually enjoyed those a lot. I thought those were a lot more fun than actually the main series itself. But once we get back into this, it's just laid out very cinematically, so you get a lot of talking dialogue, get a lot of background. But the crux of it is there's a bunch of Reed Richards and a bunch of alternate universe. There's a bunch of Reed Richards' fathers in a bunch of alternate universe, a bunch of Dooms in a bunch of different alternate universes, Franklin Richards, and they're all kind of getting together, and because they see this like cataclysmic event happening over and over again, and they want to make sure it stops in every reality. So they're getting together. Some of them are actually trying to push forward a different agenda. Others are trying to stop it all from happening. And so they end up kind of fighting each other, and it's kind of an odd thing. Valeria, the daughter of the Fantastic Four, comes back and talks to Sue Richards a little bit. This Steve Epting's art's nice. It's very, very pretty to look at, which is half the battle of comics, I guess. It's got that like sort of semi-realistic coloring done to it. Which, is a lot of modern comics these days. I don't know. I mean, in some scenes I like it, but in other scenes, look at this. I mean, we have a whole page of Doom kind of sitting there talking, and, it just, these decompressed storylines don't make me as happy or give me as much of a fun factor as like the old stuff. But bottom line is there's these strange Celestials out there, and eventually they're going to become a huge threat towards everybody. And that's what's going on here. So lots of convoluted plot threads, because this is what Jonathan Hickman does. But these are meant to be classical scenes in New York and all that. There's actually a little Stan Lee in the background there. So lots of convoluted plots with Atlantis going to war. Sue's taking over Atlantis. There's the Kree are being invaded by the Inhumans. Galactus finds out that there's this like Galactus corpse buried from another world or reality, buried underneath the Earth here, that Reed's using to power his strange little apocalyptic engine thing. It's there's a ton going on, and you have to read this from Volume 1. You cannot start here, and you'll just be completely lost. Meanwhile, the Negative Zone is going a little crazy. Annihilus is planning an invasion, and the kids are messing around with that. And I remember reading these in single issues, and I thought this was horrible in single issues, because Hickman really does not give enough of a story in a single issue for you to really remember what goes on from month to month. It's much better read in a big, thick trade format like this than it is like that. And it's actually pretty fast-paced, even though I was mentioning a lot of the talkie scenes, and there are a lot of talkie scenes. It does, just because of the way it's laid out, it does end up pretty fast-paced compared to some other comics. But yeah, in single issue, this really didn't work out. I was lost and confused just because there's too many plot threads to keep track of when you're doing it that way. I honestly recommend going through all of Fantastic Four by Hickman, that is, in one swoop, so that you don't lose track of any of the plot threads. Because I read Volume 1 several months ago, and I was like, oh, I kind of remember what's going on. But the giant fight against Annihilus and all that happens here, and they quote, lose Johnny Storm. And when they lose Johnny Storm, that's kind of where they have some little sad episodes here. This looks like a fill-in artist. I don't know who this is. Must be Nick Dragotta. Not nearly as good as Epting. I don't like the colors on this one too. It's got like kind of like a almost watercolory palette to it, and I think it just amplifies the wrong parts of the art, unfortunately. But this is just a sad one where they're mourning the quote death of Johnny Storm. And this is when I got into comics reading this the first time, I really thought, you know, this is something that doesn't impact me at this point, because they kill the characters forever, and they come back, you know, 10, 20, 50 issues later every single time now. So it's not even an event like having one of these characters, quote, die or whatever. It just, I mean, they have this whole reaction issue where I think this is part of their Nuff Said event, which they did for a while, where they had every book out that month have no dialogue to it. And so, you know, it was pretty quick. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, this looks like it's back to Epting's art at this point, so I think we're on the next issue. But, you know, the character deaths just don't have any impact after a while, because they are never real deaths. They are never once a real death. And it's just like, it's a bit tiring of a deal. So this is where it switches to FF, which stands for Future Foundation, which is sort of their group that they're building to stop these destructions of the world and multiverse and universe and all that. And Epting's back on art. It's beautiful again. The Spider-Man joins the Fantastic Four, or Future Foundation, I'm sorry, at this point. This is one of my favorite drawings ever. Sue Richards, absolutely beautiful there. And, you know, their costume designs are silly, but they're all right. And this is where they really start to build this crew in order to stop these the goings-on, which we'll see in the omnibus volume when we get to it. But they invite Doom into the home, and Doom actually becomes part of the team at this point, and they start going into the future a bunch and into the past a bunch, and there's a lot of different timeline threads going on here. Again, this was terrible to read in single issues. I dropped the comic at the time. I know a lot of people really liked it. I mean, with the realistic art, people are really into this, even though it's like every panel here is a close-up reaction shot, 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 with like nothing going on. They're just a bunch of pinups, right? And then the next page is pretty much the same thing. I mean, it does look that photorealistic because of the way the colors are done, so it tricks people into thinking it's like phenomenal art. And like I said, I like the figures the way that they're drawn, and that was one of my favorite Sue Richards I've ever seen drawn back there also. So I'm not one of bagging on it too much, but this is something about modern comics I don't love that much. Again, same thing. So I want a little more action, you know. This is an action adventure comic at the end of the day. Fantastic Four. I mean, FF. But we get into it eventually. Once it starts, there's a big slow roll, and this is how Hickman does things too. He slow rolls a ton of stuff. Once it starts picking up into the action, it really starts going, and so it does that here. And who takes over the art at this point? I actually like this person's art, maybe better than Steve Epting's. It is Barry Kitson. So Barry Kitson does the art here. He's got a little bit more of a sort of comic-y way of doing things that I just feel like flows better for comic books. The colorist here chose some very bland colors that kind of bogged it down maybe, but there's a little bit more of action-y shots, even when they're just sitting. And that's that. So they're preparing for their big final battle. And so this is a spot where you really want to go. It's like a, Johnny Storm dies and has that whole fight. But beyond that, it's still just slow rolling the build into something which I'm actually in the middle of the Omnibus Volume 2 to wrap up this story right now. But it starts to go crazy, and at that point, it gets really cool. And yes, this background is really useful and helpful, but it's a lot of backstory. It's a lot of exposition to get through in order to get to the sweet spot of this. And so it's just suffers from the decompression of modern comics, in my opinion. Like I said, the art look has that photorealism look that looks kind of nice, but again, it just doesn't have that action punch that I like out of comics so much at the same time. So it was worth reading. Again, it's pretty fast paced, just because of the way it's laid out, and there's not an overdue of dialogue, so you can roll through it pretty quickly. A lot of plot threads to go through. I'll again recommend reading the entire run at the same time, so you don't get lost on any of this stuff. And beyond that, it's mildly enjoyable. I'd say this is a 7.5 out of 10 as far as comics go. This is the Complete Collection Volume 2 by Jonathan Hickman, Fantastic Four. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.